Today in episode 26 of the podcast, we're going to be talking about NBC using AI for the Olympics. We also have Shrek coming back. We've got 2 new Shrek films on their way. The first one might be seen in 2025. We'll also break down the 5th episode of The Acolyte and review the prequel film A Quiet Place, Day 1. I'm Brad, that's Josh, and welcome to We'll Bring the Popcorn.
So to start off the news this week, we have something coming out about one of my guilty pleasure movies that we talked about in our previous episodes. It's been announced that Friday 4 is in the works. So that's definitely interesting news because it's been a while since the last Friday movie came out. You know, Friday After Next, I believe, is the last one that came out. And it seems like Ice Cube is going to be attached to it as well, obviously, as he should be. But not a whole lot of news other than that coming out of it. But the fact that it's being made is pretty interesting development.
Yeah, even though I enjoy them, I was surprised to hear that we're getting another one. But again, I guess you shouldn't be that surprised because just everything is being brought back and remade or rebooted or continued. But I hope they do a good job with it. It's definitely a different time and era for, those type of movies and see how they fit and, bringing into the new generation, of course, where the age of all the actors and where everybody is to see kind of where they can go with the story and, what kind of humor and everything else they can give us.
Yeah, and those movies are notorious for kind of launching career paths for several comedians at this point, but I just want to say, for the love of God, if we can make it happen, can we get Chris Tucker back as Smokey in one way, shape, or form or another in this movie?
Like, I don't think he can without him.
Yeah, he has to. Like, he hasn't been around since the first one, but he was obviously so iconic in the original that, we keep clamoring for it to happen. I think now's a good time to make it happen. Give us what we want and give me Smokey back, please.
Oh, absolutely. That would be a ton of fun to see him return. We potentially have him coming back with another Rush Hour film. Sure. We haven't seen a whole lot, from him acting-wise lately. It'd be great to have him return to the Friday franchise.
Yeah, he's definitely due for it. I know he's been doing some stand-up comedy tours and stuff like that, but I'd love to see him back on the screen and one of his most iconic early roles for sure.
Another film series that we haven't seen in a while, the last one came out in 2010, is the Shrek series. So Eddie Murphy was talking, he's got the new Axel Foley Beverly Hills Cop movie coming out. Yep. And he was talking about that they're actually doing a spinoff for Donkey, so he's going to come back and voice Donkey, but that he's also recording his lines for Shrek 5 and even dropped that we could see that in 2025. So again, it's it's going to be 15 years since the last one, but we're going to get Shrek 5 potentially next year, 2026, somewhere in the next 2 years. I love those movies. I had a ton of fun with them, even though they came out kind of more in our teen years, but they had a little bit more adult, kind of crass humor to them at times. With my dad, I will always think of Shrek and remember him because he loved those movies and wanted, like, he asked us, "Hey, are you wanting to go see Shrek?" I'm like, "Sure, okay, I'll take you." He wasn't exactly a huge moviegoer, but that was kind of his roundabout way of asking, like, "Hey, I want to see this movie. Will you all go with me?" And he loved them, laughed at them. They were so much fun.
I love that being a core memory, though. But yeah, like so many people in like our generation, and even like the next generation after us, like, those are big time movies, and they all made a ton of money. I get why they're going back to the well with it. I know we kind of talk about sequels ad nauseum, but that just seems to be the state of the industry right now. It's like not a lot of original stuff is coming out, but we are getting these sequels. And I knew it was a matter of time before Donkey finally got a movie. Like, that was kind of why is it taking so long for that to happen? I don't necessarily know, but it seems like they're going back to that well, and that's exciting if you're a fan of that franchise, as we all were. I don't think any of the original 4 Shrek movies were bad in any way, shape, or form. So if they make another quality one, it's going to make a ton of money either way, but I'm excited to see what they come up with for sure.
Yeah, and you had Eddie confirm that his dragon wife will be in it along with their, hybrid kids. So it'll be interesting to see. They were so much fun just to be able to laugh. And like I said, it did have a little bit more humor that was geared towards the adults. Enjoyable by kids as well. But I also want to see, 14 years past that, how they update the CGI and everything for it, because they were decent looking films back there. You go back and watch Shrek now, you can see, especially going to Spider-Verse and Inside Out 2 and others that have come out since then, that there's been some huge advancements. So I'm curious to see how they make these films look now.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to look like super crisp and clean and and keep a lot of. I hope it just keeps a lot of that charm because they are kind of charming films, and I'll never be able to look at Shrek, and obviously Mike Myers has done such a great job voicing that role and not think of what could have been if when they said that it was originally written for Chris Farley before he passed.
Yeah, there's a video out there that you can hear Chris Farley doing some of the voices and stuff to it. And yeah, as much as I love Chris, it was so kind of odd just to hear him doing Shrek and what these films would have been if it was Chris Farley behind Shrek instead of Mike Myers.
Just wonder how many other roles he could have gotten like after that had he not, tragically passed when he did at the young age that he did. But yeah, I'm excited for them to go back to that well and just see what kind of story they can come out with. You know what I mean? Like we said, just beating it into the ground at this point. If they come up with good stories, that's great, and you hope it just doesn't overstay its welcome.
Yeah.
So moving on to another. I don't want to say sequel necessarily, but kind of a spinoff, or like we're getting an English version of something. David Fincher has come out and said he's working on an English version of the Squid Games, which is. It's kind of an interesting thing because there's so many reality competition type shows and things that have come out, and Squid Games wound up blowing up huge during the pandemic. Obviously, the second season of that is getting ready to come out on Netflix later this year, but now they're doing an English version. I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, because they kind of mentioned it's going to be a remake of it and not like say this is a Squid Game like sequel that's like an American chapter or something. Like we have the dubbed and the sub version of the original. It just came out in 2021. Like you said, the second season is coming out here in December. Do we already need some sort of remake to this? Because, I mean, as Godzilla -1 has shown, I keep going back to this, but people flock to something that was dubbed. So do we really, or sub, not dubbed, do we really need to already have an English remake version? How are they just going to try to go bigger and over the top, or is the only real difference going to be it's Americans and English speaking people instead of being a Korean film?
And David Fincher gets a lot of leeway with me personally, just because Fight Club is one of my all-time favorite movies, and it was so incredibly well done. But I'm excited to see what his take on this could potentially be. And I kind of agree that like it's not that old of a property yet. Does it really need an American version of it or an English version of it? Who knows? But we see that all the time with all these other like things that get popular like internationally, and they want it making their way here to try to put their own American spin on it. So I'm curious to see what it'll do.
Speaking of another international show that's getting an American remake, we have Michael Fassbender signed on to star in and executive produce an espionage thriller series, The Agency, for Paramount Plus. So this is something George Clooney is behind. It's a remake of the French political drama series The Bureau. So that lasted 5 series. International here. It was highly rated, so it could be a really good show. But again, it's another remake. It's another kind of just version of something that's already out there. So as you said, it's straight original stuff. We're just not seeing a whole lot anymore, and it's just reboot and remake and redo. But Michael Fassbender in an espionage thriller could be a lot of fun. He's a fantastic actor. We'll see if George Clooney is just executive producing and show running, or probably not show running. I think he's just executive producing, but we'll see if he pops up in this series as well.
And I know Paramount Plus isn't like one of the bigger streaming services yet, but I mean, it's got a lot of high quality content. It's got a lot of great nostalgia content on it. I'm not trying to shill for it, I swear, but like they do have some really good original series that have getting a lot of like some low key like positive buzz around them. Like I know the show that Jeremy Renner is in. Has gotten some acclaim to it. The show that Sylvester Stallone has done on there has been pretty good. So I'm kind of confident in their ability to kind of take these series and make them pretty good. So you throw somebody as talented as Michael Fassbender on it, that's going to give it a lot of credibility and draw a lot of eyes to it, which is smart on their part. But I'm excited to see what they come up with.
Yeah, it could be really fun. Again, we kind of talk about just how everything is a reboot or remake, but if they take the care to do it right and make enough difference between, but also, pay the respects to what came before, kind of like the American Office did to the British Office, where some may disagree that, the more British Office fans may think that the American Office wasn't as good, but, as long as they give a good amount of care to it, it could be a really fun series. Because like I said, it was a 5-season series. It was really highly rated over there. So if they can even match what it did, it could be a solid series for Paramount.
Yeah, and the jury's still out. But like I said, you put George Clooney behind it, and then you put Michael Fassbender in it. It's going to do pretty well, I think. Now we just got to see if like you said, the meat of the story quality is going to be there. And I'm excited to check it out and see what they come up with and see if it's worth making it past a couple episodes. So we'll definitely give it a shot when it comes out. I'm definitely looking forward to that. Another series that I'm really looking forward to the next season of is Andor, and it's been announced today that Ben Mendelsohn is going to return as Krennic in season 2, which was his character from Rogue One. Yep. So excited to see that integrated into Andor season 2. Which was, in my opinion, a surprise hit for me. Like, I really enjoyed the take on it. I know some people, like, Rogue One is one of those really polarizing, like, Star Wars movies. You have people that absolutely love it, and then you have people that go the exact opposite, which is kind of anything Star Wars at this point. But I'm excited to see what season 2 is going to bring for that.
Yeah, because I loved Rogue One. It was, more of your espionage type of darker story. So we got kind of a more adult mystery that just, how it ended, it didn't end very bright and bubbly or anything. Like it ended very, emotionally with, kind of what leading into A New Hope, Andor going back before that. So we kind of expected, a season 2 or 3 as it continues on that we're going to have to start seeing some Rogue One characters because we're getting into that timeline. So it's going to be nice to see how they tie that in together and bring it into the movie and see some of these actors return to the role. It's going to be really good because they have taken a lot of care with Andor. Season 1 was, to me, up to the same quality as Rogue One was. Sure. So, so bringing in Andy Serkis and, what he did with the prison scenes and stuff there was really great. And, I'm really looking forward to season 2. Still not expected to see that until 2025. But, just to have, Ben returning and potentially some other actors, it's going to be a lot of fun to see them come back.
I love it. And I will say Rogue One, in my opinion, has one of the most absolutely epic endings of a Star Wars film, with the scene of just getting this amazing dark Darth Vader like going into New Hope, and just that tear that he goes on and that shit. It's just amazing. I wanted to kind of highlight that a little bit because I think that gets a little bit lost. It's like one of my favorite all-time Star Wars scenes. Is just that you got so many fans clamoring, give us a Vader series, especially after, Hayden returning for Obi-Wan and Ahsoka, and then that scene in Rogue One, like, give us a Vader spinoff series so we can see the dark. Like, we really haven't seen a whole lot of what made him so fearsome and why everybody was so afraid of him, other than those little bits and pieces from Rogue One and more. Like, give us that dark Darth Vader series where we just see him destroying the galaxy. Yeah, and getting that reputation that made everybody genuinely fear him would be awesome. I'd love to see it. So moving on to, we got a trailer for a movie called Here from Robert Zemeckis. So I'm going to see anything he does because Back to the Future and Castaway and just so many huge hits behind him and Forrest Gump and stuff. So he's got a new film here, which he's got Tom Hanks in it. It's the biggest thing about it is how they filmed it. And I wanted to talk about that because I always love the uniqueness when they do something different when filming a film, but the camera's going to be static, so it's facing one direction, not moving, but the world around it will change. So we see in the trailer, like we've been seeing back to the dinosaurs and all throughout history, and then we see the house being built all around the camera, and then you see, everything that they're going through and everything like that. Most cameras are going to get multiple shots. You're going to get from different rooms and directions. Like, this camera is in one place and it's not changing. And the trailer, I heard the synopsis of how that was doing. Then we got the trailer and I was like, all right, I'm hooked. I'm sold, because I just love that uniqueness of it. And I hope the story is great around it, but just having a different kind of way that you filmed a movie be a crucial part to it is really intriguing to me. I love when we get to nerd out about films a little bit, because it seems like we do spend a lot of time talking about like sequels and other things and other like comic book properties. This seems like such a really cool, like you said, a really cool idea that I'm excited to see if it really works out throughout a whole narrative story that they're going to tell. Because like you said, it is like a time capsule of a single fixed point, which is really cool, like a really cool concept. And if you haven't seen the trailer yet, I can't recommend enough actually going to see it to kind of put your eyes to what they're going to try to tell. Like you said, it's about, this one fixed point and how it's changed over time, and you're going to see what I'm assuming is going to be like this beautiful life story of Tom Hanks and his wife. I forget who's playing his wife in the film.
When I try to think of her name, my first thought goes to Princess Buttercup from The Princess Bride. So it's Robin Wright. So
Yeah,
I
that is-
think
that's
of
it.
Princess
Yeah,
Buttercup,
yeah.
The Princess Bride. I'm like, all right, that's Robin Wright.
Fantastic movie anyway, right? But
Of course, it's got them together. I think this is the first time they're back together since Forrest Gump.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, she played Jenny in Forrest Gump as well. So it's a really cool take on like this family's life in this house as well. And you like you said, you put Robert Zemeckis and Tom Hanks together in a movie. It's been magic every time. Like you said, Forrest Gump, Castaway. Anytime these two connect on a film, it's beautiful. Back to the Future is both, I'd say, top 10 movies for both of us as well of all time. Just incredibly well done. And I'm excited to see this full movie in its entirety because it's such a cool concept that, it's not going to have all these elaborate shots and these moving set pieces and everything like that. It's literally like you take a camera and I just imagine them shooting it, like setting a camera down and just building these sets around it and kind of moving it through and updating it throughout the course of time. And just, it's so cool that I'm really chomping at the bit to see this movie when it finally comes out. Cause it's just like the concept of it alone was just like, okay, you have my attention. And then you put, the brilliant people that are going to be in the film behind it as well. They're going to just kill every scene that they're in. And I'm so excited to check this out.
Yeah, I love when they do stuff like that. Like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is one of my favorite movies of all time. And we probably need to do a favorite movie list here and soon on the podcast. But I love that because, well, the acting was great, but it also did a lot of unique stuff with the way it filmed. It did a lot of practical things of how, Kate Winslet disappeared from this hallway into a new room or making Jim Carrey look really small underneath the table. They did a lot of interesting and crazy things with camera perspective and how they block stuff off and do it all practically, and I absolutely love that. And to see something kind of along that way with having a fixed position and that the camera almost becomes a character because it's there. It's like it's observing everything from the creation to where exactly the movie's going to end. We're just seeing it from the camera's perspective. Like we're getting this one singular view of this world and this life. And like I said, I really hope this premise pays off to a solid film.
Yeah, like I can't glow about it enough. It's probably going to be one of my most anticipated films next year when it comes out. I believe 2025 is when it's scheduled to come out. But getting an early trailer for it already, I'm so excited for that. I love when people can kind of take some creative liberties and tell like a unique story and shoot it in a way that's not your traditional, traditional way of shooting a film and things that look different because it's fun. They stand out, right? And if you can hit a home run with the story as well, you can really make some magic with it. And I can imagine that this movie is probably going to start getting some strong Oscar buzz when it does come out already. I know that's kind of overhyping things a little bit, but I think that has all the recipe, pieces to make a really good special film, and I'm just so excited to check it out.
And I love behind the scenes stuff too, so I'd really love to see what they thought about it because
Absolutely.
most films, especially when you're either multi-camera or single camera, when you're doing multiple angles, they got to refilm these scenes so many different times because, all right, now we need from the left side, front side, we need straight on, we need from behind. You need all these different angles, and it can take a very long time to film some of these scenes because you have to redo it. But with a camera in a singular space and you're not needing to, you got to block it off in front of the camera, but you're not having to redo it from so many angles. I'm curious to see how that affected their performance and kind of what we got out of it from there.
Yeah, if they put a making of out there, I will watch that as soon as it comes out too, because it just the whole concept of it fascinates me, and I'm very excited for that. If you haven't gone and seen the trailer yet, please, like I said, please go do it. Let us know what you think when you watch the trailer of it and see. We don't get super hyped like that for too many like things as far as filmmaking goes, but this has, in my opinion, an opportunity to be something really special, and I'm excited to see it when it comes out for sure. So kind of transitioning back into some of the other big stories of the week, one of the big movies that we're both really looking forward to is the Fantastic Four. We've talked about it a lot already on the podcast in our previous episodes, but we get a little bit of confirmation this week from Kevin Feige that the Fantastic Four is going to be a kind of a period piece set in the 60s and kind of like an alternate universe to the MCU we already know. So we got a little bit of confirmation as to like where and when it was going to be taking place, and now we just got to see how it gets integrated.
Yeah, because we kind of expected that because how through the MCU so far, do we not know who the Fantastic Four are, how they haven't shown up? So doing in a multiverse kind of story makes sense. And then, of course, they're going to find a way to bring them to modern day, bring them to the current MCU era. But I can't wait. We're looking at that starts filming I think in July here. So when we get filming going, we'll see how much they can keep under wraps with that, because it's really hard anymore. Deadpool and Wolverine that's coming out at the end of the month here. We've starting to get a little more, but they're releasing probably a little too much because we want to be surprised. We don't want to see too much. We even got Superman filming, and we're seeing his suit and a lot of stuff out. It's hard for them to keep a lot of stuff under wraps. So I'm curious to see how much with Fantastic Four they can keep under wraps before it comes out.
Yeah, they do a pretty good job for the most part of getting it, but films those that big and that epic that's going to have so many eyeballs on it, spoilers are going to be almost impossible to avoid. I know, we've talked about with Deadpool and Wolverine, just actively going out of our way to try to avoid and hide things about the movie, because we do want to be so genuinely surprised and get a more authentic reaction when we see the film. And I know Marvel's not exactly helping themselves with the last trailer they just put out for it to kind of spoil a character return.
Because all the media outlets are just here's a screenshot of the person that they just revealed. Come on.
Can we have, and my hope, and this is me looking at things through my optimistic lens, is that they're giving us a little bit to save some of the bigger stuff that's coming. That's the hope, because I really do want to be genuinely surprised in this movie, and I'm trying so hard to make sure keywords and buzzwords are just cleared out of my algorithms so I don't see it on just accident, because it's going to be impossible to avoid social media for the next month until this film comes out. But yeah, I'm excited to see with the Fantastic Four as well, how much they can keep under wraps, because it's a property that so many people are looking forward to. How much they're going to be able to keep under wraps from the public until it actually gets done and comes out.
And especially, doing some 1960s set pieces and by having to create these streets or going to cities, kind of like Cincinnati, that's used for a lot of period pieces. It's kind of hard when you're having to use these older cities to film in to get your background and everything else for a picture not to slip of them in their suit or something else. We'll see kind of what they do with the suits too, because we know at least Eben, he's going to be motion capture CG for the thing, we'll just see kind of how that goes. But we expected it from the way they announced a Fantastic Four with that card, which was kind of odd way that they did it. They've never really announced something like that. But we do have Marvel announce they are going to be at Hall H this year, so I have to figure we're going to have the Fantastic Four cast brought out to Hall H. And if you haven't been able to do San Diego Comic-Con on Hall H, we were able to do it back in 2019. It is a spectacle to go in there. It was pretty awesome to be able to sit in that room and see so much stuff we got to see the Dark Crystal Netflix series premiere episode in there with Mark Hamill, and got to see Henry Cavill with The Witcher first panel, it's pretty awesome. But we weren't able to do the Marvel panel that year because we didn't get the Saturday tickets. But have Marvel back at Hall H with the Fantastic Four about to film, with rumors of Spider-Man 4 potentially filming this year. There could be a lot to kind of show off.
I'm excited. And that's going to be something that the world is going to be watching for when Comic-Con does roll around for that as well, because it's always an epic time, like you said. We had such an amazing experience going to Comic-Con and doing the Hall H, like you said. We did get to be in the same room as Henry Cavill, which is awesome, especially right before The Witcher took off. And it was such a cool experience. It's definitely, if you're into conventions and those types of things, it's definitely a bucket list item that I can't recommend enough. We're going to eventually try to go back and do it again as well.
Still, we got to hear Mark Hamill do his Joker laugh
in person.
That was just so as kids of the 90s, it was yes.
It's I wasn't crying, I promise.
So moving on over to HBO and Max, so we kind of it's kind of an odd story, but I kind of get it. So we got the announcement that the Welcome to Derry, which is the It prequel series, we got the Harry Potter series, and the Lantern series for DC. They were all Max originals. Well, now they're HBO originals. So I guess it's a shift that they're going to air on HBO, but they'll also be on Max for streaming, because kind of today with how everything is, HBO and Max are kind of just one and the same. So saying it's going from Max to HBO, I'm still going to be watching on Max. I'm not subscribed to HBO anywhere other than watching the series on Max.
And I'm still, when this came out, I'm still trying to figure out what the heck any of that even means. Like, it's not a Max original. It's going to be an HBO original, but it's going to be on the same thing. Well, most of the stuff they put on Max winds up on HBO anyway, that you can watch. So it's so confusing sometimes how they want to brand things and how they want to move it off. But I'm excited that they're all moving forward. The fact that the Lanterns is actually happening and really going to, I know they've been kind of hit or miss on whether or not they were going to do anything with the Lanterns, in recent years, because there was talks of the guy that played John Diggle in the Arrow series was going to get a Lantern series, and that kind of got scrapped. So it's been a lot of things up in the air with that, but excited to see that that's moving forward as well. And I know we're both really looking forward to the Harry Potter series for sure. We love the It movies as well, but the whole branding thing seems kind of confusing in how they announced it, and like they're so vague with what it means. And there's a lot in the sorry, I don't mean to go off on a tangent here, but there's even still so much in the air with like Warner Media. Like, are they looking to merge with certain things? I know a lot of their TV media rights deals are being renegotiated for a lot of things. I know they just reached a deal with the NBA. Not to go off on too much of a tangent here, but there's so much up in the air with Warner Brothers right now that this just adds another layer of confusion.
Even when you think about that, Max was HBO Max until last year, so it's like, does it really matter? Is it for their bookkeeping or something else? Does it matter? It just kind of felt like it's to most people anymore when it comes to HBO, Max and HBO are kind of the same thing. Like, I watch House of the Dragon on Max. I don't have HBO with anything else but Max, so it's like, okay, I'm still going to be watching exactly the same way as it was a Max original, but maybe, I don't know exactly what it meant, but it was important enough to him to make that announcement that, hey, these aren't Max, these are HBO shows.
Sure.
Okay, I'll watch it on Max.
Marketing people, I guess, needed something to do. I don't know, but it was such a weird story. But you know what? Either way, at the end of the day, all three of these series are something we're both very much looking forward to, and we're going to watch them on Max when they come out eventually.
And I did want to point out with Harry Potter series, we did get some showrunners and people put in there. So we got people behind Succession, which has been a really big show, or going to be behind the Harry Potter series. They also worked on Game of Thrones. One of them worked on Game of Thrones as well. So they've got some kind of heavy hitters behind this series. So it's really hoping that they do a really good job with the Harry Potter series, because, the Harry Potter movies can be a little... have people split on it. I've read all the books. I've watched all the movies. I love both, but there's some that hate the movies because they were too different from the books, or, all the controversy outside of that. But I hope they do a really good job with bringing Harry Potter to life as a series.
At the end of the day, that's still a multi-billion-dollar franchise that's got theme park, that's literally got whole theme parks dedicated to it. So I think it's going to be just fine. But the discourse around the internet's just weird sometimes, man. I just don't get it. I don't understand it.
But it's also, as we talked about already, getting another reboot, which it's been longer than it feels like it has since the last movie came out, or even when the first movie came out. But to kind of already get that reboot and series, because you're going to, especially we've lost so many actors from the Harry Potter universe and big names that, you've got some big shoes to fill for these kids are going to be coming in to take on Harry and Ron and Hermione and everything, and plus the adult actors are going to be taking on Snape and Dumbledore and everything. Like, there's some big shoes to fill. Yeah,
the pressure is going to be on big time. But like you said, it's definitely something we're looking forward to. But the fact that they're putting a lot of weight behind it is very promising. I know they're banking big, especially on the Harry Potter series. I know that's going to get a heavy investment, but you mentioned that the people that were behind Succession are going to be behind Harry Potter. If you've never watched Succession, that show is wild. So I'm just trying to, I'm trying not to have in my brain a Succession meets Harry Potter type thing, because if you watch Succession, there's a lot of crazy stuff that happens in that show. So I'm like, I don't know how they're going to handle with Harry Potter being a completely different dynamic. But I'm excited, though, because that just means that they're taking people from already proven successful entities and integrating them into something that they're going to invest a lot of money in, is going to very much be successful too. So that's exciting. But to kind of transition into something else that we were wanting to touch on, you were talking about having been so long since the original came out and whether or not it warranted it. We did get some news this week from CBS that they're picking up a Van Helsing series, which is very interesting to me because Van Helsing is like this supernatural, a very dark supernatural pocket of the DC universe, but it's coming to CBS, and it's getting kind of an interesting twist to it.
Yeah, it's more of a police procedural series. Like, it didn't even mention monsters or supernatural stuff in it. Like, you could do, as the supernatural series show, you can do a modern supernatural, show pretty well, but it didn't even mention, like, it's Van Helsing is going to use his inquisitive mind to help his ex-FBI agent solve New York crimes. Like, what of this actually has to pertain to Van Helsing? Because we have an executive producer behind Elementary as part of it, and that was, a modern take on Sherlock Holmes. But, Sherlock Holmes doesn't really have that supernatural part to it. He's solving mysteries and everything else, and it can work just fine in a modern take. But you're taking Van Helsing and just taking the name, basically, and no supernatural. There could be supernatural elements, but by the press release and everything they put out, it didn't sound like we're going to have the monsters or any of the supernatural stuff. It's just like a police show.
Yeah, and just taking the name Van Helsing, which it feels so weird, especially with the fact that CBS got their hands on it. I know CBS hasn't really delved into too much on, I know they originally tried with Supergirl at one point back in the day. The first season of Supergirl was on CBS, for those that don't remember. But they've really kind of stayed away from that since, and the fact that they're bringing another property like Van Helsing in, and it just raised a lot of eyebrows, and it's got a whole lot of questions for me that they've still yet to answer, because, like you said, if you know Van Helsing and are, fans of the movies like the Keanu Reeves movie, or, some of the other stuff that they've done with the DC universe with that actor that's played Van Helsing in the TV shows.
Hugh Jackman's Van Helsing movie and everything with Kate Beckinsale and... That was kind of critically panned, that it wasn't
a little bit,
very
but yeah,
good
like,
movie, but it was. I had fun with it, even though it wasn't.
But the whole premise of this just feels off and weird. Like, is it actually going to be affiliated with DC in any way? Like, we just don't know, or are you just taking a name and slapping it on something, and everybody's going to draw conclusions to it that just don't exist? So, the jury's definitely still out. But that was definitely a weird story that came out this week, and it just left us scratching our heads like, what the heck are they trying to work on?
It could end up being a good series, but yeah, all it sounds now of being about Van Helsing is the name alone. Like, it's not anything else to do with Van Helsing and his whole story and the supernatural and monsters and stuff. It's just using the name to create a new series. And we hope we're wrong and that it's a good series and they do right by it, but it just feels like they're slapping a name of something on it just to help it.
CSI Van Helsing coming in 2025 or whenever it's coming. But it's just so, that was definitely an oddball story for this week for sure.
And one that we're still kind of mixed on, I'm giving hope to it because it's got Andy Serkis and it has Peter Jackson all behind it. But we got a little bit more information on the hunt for Gollum. So Andy Serkis teased that we could be seeing some Lord of the Rings alums showing up in the hunt for Gollum, which kind of going back through the books and where that story is looking to take place between the Hobbit and the Fellowship, it's roughly about 17 years in between, or between the, before the Fellowship of the Ring started is when they were looking for Gollum, and you had Aragorn and Gandalf and Elrond and a few others were part of that. So do we get Viggo returning? He's kind of mentioned that he's kind of always ready or want to, and I still got to laugh that Sir Ian, who just hopefully his recovery is going well. He fell off stage doing a play. Yeah. I hope his recovery is going good. But they asked him about it, and he's like, "Well, if I'm still alive."
It's such a perfect response from him if you know anything about him and his sense of humor. But yeah, I mean, like you said, we've both kind of were cautious about this story when it came announced. Like, does it merit an entire film? But like you said, if the story is right and we can get some appearances from these, absolutely iconic characters. It's my favorite trilogy of films ever. So it'll always pique my interest when they do anything related to that. But I know Viggo's more than once come out and said that, hey, if it's right, I'll be back. And I'm all for it if it's done in a way that makes sense. But it's definitely an interesting story that they're going to try to tell. But having Andy Serkis attached to it as well, you kind of have to if it's a Gollum property anyway, because he was so brilliant in that performance the first time that, obviously if they did anybody else, it wouldn't be as good if I had to speak freely about it. But I don't know, man. I'm still on the fence about it. I want to see some stuff more stuff come out about it, story-wise. What are they doing with it? And obviously, visually, I think it's going to look just spectacular anyway, because they always do. But yeah, I'm excited for it.
And I figure they're going to, do their due diligence and be careful with who they bring back, because of course Ian Holm, who played the original older Bilbo, he has passed away, and we still have some other actors around, but you just don't want to see him like recast, say, like Bilbo, or use something else, because in that timeline it would be Ian Holm's Bilbo. So you don't really want to see, I wouldn't really want to see any of Bilbo, even though he has the ring at that point, because it's just, Ian was so great at it, such a great actor, and to try to replace him just to have Bilbo show up, I don't know how I really feel about that, but with how much love and attention they put into the original, and with Andy and Peter behind it, I have a feeling that they're going to handle it right, as long as the studio allows them, because we know what happened with The Hobbit. We need to let the creatives handle it and not try to just pile stuff in, because I don't want to hear The Hunt for Gollum has gone from one film to like 6.
For the love of God, don't do that. Just keep it to one film and you'll be fine, I think. But I wanted to move into a little bit of TV news as well, because we've talked about the show, and it's a show that I've recently finally got to catch up on, and I'm now a little bit ahead on now that the new season has come out, is The Bear. So The Bear, very popular series on FX now, just dropped its entire season 3 on Hulu and Disney Plus, so check that out if you can. One of the stories that kind of came out around season 3 was that they were filming season 3 and season 4 back to back. Well, it kind of got leaked at the premiere that, due to script issues, season 4 didn't actually get shot the same time as season 3, so there's going to be a little bit of a delay, unfortunately.
Yeah, and they said they were kind of doing that mainly because you've got Jeremy Allen White. He's in everything now, so he's got the Bruce Springsteen biopic he's got a film, which he did mention he wants to do his own singing in the film, so we'll see how that turns out. But you also have Eben is going to be the Thing in the Fantastic Four, so he's going to have a big commitment to his time. So it looked like we may not get the season 4 filming until 2025, so you're looking maybe June, because it filmed earlier this year and came out in June, so you're thinking if they are able to start it in January, February 2025, probably a summer to a fall release for season 4, but that's a lot longer than we were expecting. We're expecting, if with that announcement going back to back, that are we going to get it in the fall, we're going to get it early 2025 or something, but we definitely got more of a wait, which is I'll be fine with, because I'm glad they didn't push through with scripts they weren't happy with, or not having story ready, of just, all right, let's just get it done and ready, that they're making sure they take the time and effort to do it right, even though they have stars that are, potentially going to be pressed for time.
Yeah, like they're all moving into bigger roles and bigger careers now, coming out of this show. Like, a lot of star power is being built in that show. Like Ayo Edebari is a voice in Inside Out 2, which we're going to touch on again here in a minute, but just everybody's career from that show is really taking off, which is awesome. It's what you want to see, right? And season 3 just dropped. I'm a couple episodes in already. I'm loving it so far, and it's such a well-written series that, like you said, I'm kind of glad. It's a little bit of a bummer that they're not shooting them back-to-back, because we wanted, the follow-up to it to kind of hopefully storyline flow-wise in a smooth manner between seasons, and get not as long of a gap in between them as we tend to do with some of these shows sometimes. I'm looking at you, Stranger Things. But, if they're going to take the time to do it right, I'm willing to be patient to get the quality of stories that we've gotten from that show so far.
Oh, absolutely. Kind of moving on, we've talked about AI a lot on this podcast, and we had NBC announce that they're going to be utilizing AI in the Olympics this year. So we have Al Michaels, who is still living. They've decided that they're going to do a high-quality AI reproduction of his voice to do highlights of the Olympics. So you can customize, the feed and what you have from the different events that are going on, and it'll be Al Michaels doing, so it's Your Daily Olympic Recap on Peacock is where it's going to be found. And, you'll have Al Michaels' AI recapping the Olympics for you, and it's, I'm sure he signed off on it and everything else, which at least I hope he signed off on it. But to have someone who is still living, and, it'd be difficult for him to do a recap every day on stuff unless it was just a few minutes. But it's just still in that gray area with AI. Like, should we really be doing this? Is it needed? I mean, it's a big name to have doing it, but do people with the highlights of the Olympics really care if it was Al Michaels or if it was just some random person doing the highlights?
This screams budgetary restraints so loudly that it drives me insane, because there are so many talented broadcasters and people in the fold that they could utilize for this to do these recaps. And it screams, like I said, it screams budgetary restraint. And I cannot tell you how ridiculous this sounds as a premise. Like, don't get me wrong, the concept of AI and the things that AI can do are phenomenal if used in, you know, certain adaptable situations, right? AI is a wonderful tool for many things. And here, now it's looking like it's going to start replacing a human person on a highlight show that they're going to put on their network for people to watch. Is this the first snowball that's going to pick up steam to start rolling downhill? It's going to start replacing broadcasters at this point. Because if they can start to handle, like, doing these highlight shows and things like that for these types of things, how long until it replaces something on a live broadcast?
Yeah, because it does sound more like, the customizable aspect, you know, that utilization AI was like, okay, so because you could choose whatever sports you want to have, you know, that on. But again, it's like, why not just have a recap show with a broadcast booth that you're already paying, or have someone do it, or have Al Michaels do it, or have Snoop and Kevin Hart do it.
Right.
Just like the last Olympics with what they did. Like, it does feel like, yeah, they're like, we're trying to save a little money and not do this. And it's, I don't know, it's just, everything with AI that they're looking at, there's nothing is felt right from how the studios are trying to utilize it. It just feels like, well, we don't want to pay these actors to do it. We'll pay them a quarter of it so we can license their voice instead of paying them, you know, the full amount that they would have if they were out there. The broadcasters will, you know, we'll pay them, I don't know what it was, 10,000 instead of 70,000 or something to do it. Like, it's definitely them trying to save money, but feels like there's other ways. Maybe, you know, executives at these boards not making $100 million a year could also be a place to save money. But it still feels icky and weird to me about how they're trying to utilize AI and everything, and even talking about that they're going to use AI for background scenes and other stuff in movies. It's just, there's still just so much that I don't want us going to being that reliant on AI and putting everything into it, because you're designers and actors and musicians and you know, voices and everything else losing potential jobs because they're going to do AI, or they'll lose a quarter or more of their salary just because, all right, we'll pay you a AI fee but not a full acting fee or something like that. It's just, it was just weird to hear that they're using AI with the Olympics. I mean, it's coming up in just a few weeks here in July that I'm looking forward to. My oldest daughter really wants to watch the Olympics. I've always tuned into it, but I don't know if I will even touch this. I kind of want to see what it sounds like and how it goes, but I don't really want to support it.
Yeah, I agree. And that's the double-edged sword, right? Because like you said, this is a very slippery slope that we're starting to walk down, where it's, you know, it's going to start replacing, you know, human factors and stuff like that. And how long until they find a way that if this is successful for any one reason or another, they're going to use it as a reason to push the envelope as far as they can. And it's just, it worries me for the future of people who want to get into this type of, you know, industry, if the opportunities are going to be lessened because of it.
Oh, yeah, it sounds like we're going to have a lot more jobs that are going to be cut and replaced by AI.
Sure, and it's a very harrowing thought moving into the future for sure. So definitely something to keep an eye on, and we'll continue to talk about it as it pertains to the entertainment industry and things like that. So definitely something worth keeping an eye on.
Yeah, we wanted to, before we head into our reviews this week, give a love and shout out to all the great humans at Pixar who did Inside Out 2. You know, huge teams. Animation doesn't always get as much recognition as it should for being such a great medium. And Inside Out 2 just passed $1 billion. So it's the first movie of 2024 to gross $1 billion worldwide. And it's also the fastest animated film to do so as well. So it's just doing gangbusters. There's so many people behind these animated movies that put so much hard work into it. And I love that it's doing so well. You can check our archives to see what we thought about the film. But like, it just congratulations to them for the movie just doing so well. Even though some people, oh, it's Pixar, it's Disney. It's like there's real human beings that have worked their butts off to make this film, and they did a fantastic job. And I wanted, kind of let it be known and congratulations to the people behind it, that they've done such a great job, and that $1 billion mark is so well deserved for the film.
Yeah, and Disney's not without its controversies in certain areas, like them laying off a percentage of their workforce as well, which is definitely awful news as well. But I do think it's apropos to celebrate a success like this and the people that do still have jobs there, that put a lot of time, sweat, and effort into making, such a wonderful movie that we really enjoyed. Like you said, go back and check out our review. But I'm still like having people like talk to me about the movie. They're like, "Hey man, I saw your review. I finally went and watched it with my family. My kids loved it. We had good conversations about it coming out of it." And I'd love to see movies have that kind of hold and staying power, which is what we love to see in film in general. But it's still making a lot of money week to week, and it's holding on stronger than most movies do now.
Hey, I think this past weekend here was over 58 million domestically.
Crazy for like 3 weeks out.
Yeah. It's doing so well.
It's amazing, and we love to see that. So congratulations once again to the team at Disney and Pixar for putting out such an incredible movie that a lot of people seem to be really enjoying. So now we want to move into our TV review of the week. We are up to episode 5 of Disney Plus's The Acolyte in the Star Wars, universe. And I got to be honest, the first 4 episodes of this has been kind of an up and down ride for me. I know that I've been a little I don't want to say over critical of the show up to this point, but there's a lot of things that I've had issues with, but there's some good points as well. But I got to say, man, episode 5 really kicked in with like a hard turn in the series as far as like upping the action, upping the violence. Like this episode got very violent very quickly, and it just jumps right in where it left off with the beginning of that fight between the Jedis and, this mysterious Sith that we have been trying to figure out. I mean, we've had a pretty good idea on who we thought it was going to be, but we do get that reveal as well. But man, holy crap, man. What a freaking, way to jump into this episode. It was dark and it was violent, and I was not prepared for the gratuitous. It wasn't graphic because it's on Disney. So, I mean, they hold back on like a lot of it, but man, it got dark and violent very quickly, man.
Yeah, it did. And just to mention, we're 5 episodes in now. This is going to be pretty spoiler filled because we have to talk about what was revealed and what was done this episode, because it was pretty huge and substantial to the series. And like we've been pretty critical of the last 2 episodes, feeling like the story wasn't really progressing to where it needed to be. And while this episode was mostly one giant fight scene, we did get some progression of kind of where we're going. A little bit, yeah. Still have some issues, but overall, like the fight sequences were amazing, so well done. But yeah, we as we joked last time, well, are we just going to jump into a flashback for this episode and not even get a conclusion of that force push and everything else? Like, no, we jump straight into the battle, and it's not good for the Jedi. Like, our Sith was revealed to be Khmer, as we all thought it would be, and I still can't not see him as Jason from The Good Place. Yeah. But Manny did such an incredible job here. Like, he has that little slyness to him and looked great in, I've got to point out, the internet has a few different names for him, as Disney and Lucasfilm is calling him the Stranger now, but there was Smilo Ren and Dark Teeth. I'm more partial to Smilo Ren.
Absolutely.
That I thought that very well, but I think Manny did a great job with the action and just his reveal, and he gave us a little more depth on, the Jedi, they would refer to me as a Sith, and kind of giving that. And he gave us some dialogue that talked about his intentions. Yeah. Why is he doing this? And, he's looking for an apprentice that will build. But I still wonder if he has a master. Like, we don't know if he is meant to be still the first, true Sith that we have, or if he had a master and maybe he turned on his master and he's gone. But we get kind of dialogue that talks about the dark side of the Force. Like, the Jedi want to control and say how you can and cannot use the Force. And he's like, I want to use it how I see fit. Like I want to do what I want when it comes to the Force.
Yeah, so I think we can take a little bit of a talk here about his motivations. And you mentioned that he actually the first Sith, and the way I interpreted the way he was speaking about things, because he talks about this code that he believes in, that it seems like it's a taught code to him.
Yeah.
So it sounds like he does at some point like have a master, and maybe it's connected to the Jedi that they know, because he seems to allude a lot of Soul knowing more than he's letting on. So there's a lot of that, like, and we've talked about it. They talk about are the Jedi as, benevolent and, the all good that they've been portrayed to be for throughout almost the entirety of the Star Wars universe as we've seen it on film so far. And there's a lot of diving into gray, like what is Soul holding back? What does he know that we don't know yet? And he does seem to kind of allude to Soul maybe being aware of who's teaching him, who has taught him these ways, and now he's looking for his apprentice. But it seems like he has like this honor code that he's had instilled in him that's come from somewhere. I don't think it's a self-made code, because he seems to be very militant in it, in the fact that he believes so strongly in these things, like it was instilled to him from someone else. Like,
yeah, because even with his line saying that, the Jedi would call me a Sith, that had to come from somewhere. Like, they didn't really know he existed before this point. They knew there was someone who was kind of controlling and egging May on, but they didn't really know who that was. So why would they already be labeling him as a Sith or creating this word, the Sith? So yeah, I'm hoping we get a little more depth in that, if it's season 2 or towards the end here that we get that. But it is kind of interesting, and I didn't mean to cut you off when I talk about it, that I kind of felt it more because I've talked to you about when it came to the Coven, that there's more to that we didn't see. So I felt he was talking to Soul about that we had this fire that burned down the Coven, but all of the Coven bodies were laying in a nice pile in the middle of the room, and none of them were on fire. Like, feeling the Jedi did something dark and bad there, and I felt that's what Kamir was, alluding to, was, you did this, and you're hiding that you did something dark. So you're trying to say you're above, and you're just only use it for light and good, but you did something really dark, and you're hiding it.
Sure, and that could very well be revealed in the upcoming episode. So I'm a little bit excited to see where now that they finally picked it up and moving it along a little bit. Now let's see where we go with these last couple episodes before they come out. I thought Manny, like you said, had done a great job of emoting. Like, he's very, very, you see it. He's very skilled, a very, very skilled fighter. He's able to take down multiple Jedi with ease in a very brutal and vicious way. And there's almost no hesitation when it comes to attacking and killing these Jedi at whim. And there's some very creative and interesting ways that he takes out some of these Jedi. And it's a lot of these characters that we've come to know in the in the previous episodes. Unfortunately, the way he kills Yord and
Yord was brutal.
Yeah,
Yord and Jackie was really brutal.
It was tough. It's a tough, strong urge to, depending on how your kids do with violence, to kind of maybe use some caution before watching this episode, because they don't, there's not blood, but you very well see somebody get their neck snapped. You see, there's a lot of brutality in this episode.
Holes in the back of Jackie when she's stabbed.
Turned into basically Swiss cheese at that point, and it's very, very brutal. And I'm glad that they've kind of ramped it up a little bit here to kind of move forward. Not to say that this episode was without its issues either, because, like you said, and I know the internet feels a certain way about the twins and how they've been portrayed, and I kind of agree with a lot of it in the sense that May seems to be so flimsy in her motivations and what direction she's going. And there was some interesting dialogue between May and Osha in this episode where, Osha's kind of come to the realization that, hey, if she wants to get her sister back, she can't hesitate when they meet the next time. And she doesn't for a sense, but then there's this conversation that happens between the two of them that I found to be pretty interesting as well.
Yeah, I've definitely felt everything with May and Osha has just been odd and strange. Like we said with the third episode where we went back to the Coven, that they seem like normal kids, and then they're trying to kill a creature, and then they go back, and then they're torn on, Osha wants to leave, and May wants to be a part of this, and then May just shows up and say, well, I don't want you to be a Jedi, I'm going to kill you. And it's like, okay, and you're going that extreme. And then, with episode 4, they're walking through this forest, and she ends up telling Kamir that, my sister's alive. That changes things, but you tried to murder her as a child. Why does it change anything? So she wants to turn herself in. Well, this episode, it's like, did she completely forget that she was turning herself in? Because, we got a fight between her and Jecki, which is kind of going back to the fight sequences for a second. Jecki and the Strangers battle was fantastic because you've got her dual wielding and some really great action. I wasn't expecting, we lost majority of the cast this episode of the main cast we've been following. You had some, as in the Star Trek universe, some red shirts that just Jedi that really didn't do anything and were just cannon fodder to die and stuff. But, Jecki losing her so early was really surprising. Yord I could see because of just how he was as a knight to stand up. But, a young Padawan like Jecki. But we kind of expected when we're getting this early story of the Sith that there's probably going to be some bloodshed. But jumping back over to May, I just didn't feel where her motivations are, because she wanted to turn herself in, and then she's back to telling Osha the Jedi are brainwashing you and this and that. And then at the end of the episode, it's kind of revealed, if you're paying attention, that May took Osha's clothes and went with, our remaining Jedi of Soul. And we had Basil, the little otter character, leaving, there's only a few that are leaving, and May is pretending to be her sister now. So where's her motivations? Is she still trying to go and kill Soul after all this and still remain the Acolyte? Because I don't feel the twins they've been well acted, but I don't think their motivation and their story has been overall that interesting or that well told.
Well, it's not doing them any favors either. And the fact that we have to discuss it at this length tells me that they're not the writers of the show aren't doing as good a job of kind of laying that out for us, because like you said, during the action sequences in this episode, you get the dynamic between May and Kamir. Now is Kamir's betrayed by May, and he's trying to hurt May too. So it's like, now where does that leave May? Well, May, I think, in an effort to save her own skin, because she is still looked at nobody knows that she's trying to turn herself in at this point, so they still view her as guilty, really. And now with her master, or that she's learning from, has killed a number of Jedi, I think she may think that she's out of the clear, but they don't do such a good a job of explaining this in a way that makes sense yet. And like you said, they get to this where she subdues Osha, cuts her hair with a lightsaber, which I thought was pretty neat, and steals her clothes and goes. But what kills me is how easily Kamir was able to notice that Osha wasn't May in that episode. By the end of the episode, when they swap clothes, neither the Jedi nor Kamir were able to know that one was the other.
Because she trimmed her hair.
A haircut just made it easier to tell what was in somebody's heart at that point. That's the type of flimsy writing that we're talking about here, where I get a little more critical, but it's like, how do you not know that that's not May?
Yeah, and the same thing as we talked about Kamir being the stranger and just chopping the Jedi without hesitation. He hesitated with May. He could have killed her multiple times here, but is this another test for her? Is it supposed to, is he still playing a game to see if she's still worthy of being his acolyte? That seems to be what he kind of cares about most right now, other than, it's not exactly revenge. He has some sort of mission that he's setting out on, which I hope we get some more depth to. Yeah. But he had several instances in May. I mean, he literally had his lightsaber up to her head and could have just instantly done it, but he never did. Yeah. And to talk about his lightsaber, so we end up finding out that it's kind of a 2-in-1, not quite Darth Maul, but he has a smaller saber with the longer saber, and it attaches to the back so he can have them together. But we find out that's how he ended Jecki, because he pulled that end off and used the short saber to defeat her. But I thought that was really cool. His whole character, even though all black with a mask, You know, it's the classic Darth Vader. It's a classic Kylo Ren. It felt more Kylo Ren kind of in it, but I thought he looked great, and the mask was intimidating. Like
Very
seeing,
much.
and also, it's not Beskar from what I've seen, but it's a different type of material that we saw something we haven't really seen before, that he could use his helmet to disrupt the lightsabers of the other Jedi. So you're getting these fantastic action sequences, and then he headbutts a lightsaber, and it just shorts it out for a short amount of time. And we also calls a great moment with Jackie there that he headbutted and caused it to short out, and he's like, all right, now I'm just going to end you. And she's like, nope, I got another. But it was kind of neat. It was really cool to see, like, oh, wait, he's headbutting and disrupting the lightsabers, and it made it very visual.
Those were very awesome and creative, and I love the way that they shot that. And, yeah, that's definitely one thing I wanted to highlight as well. And it's so those were a lot of saving graces in this episode, but yeah, I mean, there's a couple episodes left. I'm interested to see what they dive into next and how they move forward with this, because, you know, we've been very critical of this in a lot of ways, rightfully so. But there are some saving graces in the show that's, you know, keeping us around for the remainder of the season to see where they take it. But there's some things that they need to definitely clean up. I thought one of the cool things that I did want to highlight as well is a little throwaway line that kind of confused me for a little bit was when he said, "Why do you wear the mask?" And he wanted him to take off his mask and reveal who he was. Soul wanting Kamir to take off his mask and reveal who he was. And he mentioned something about wearing that mask blocks his ability to read his mind, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
Like what's going on with that helmet that can block out, those type of transmissions?
Have we gotten to Professor X now?
Yeah, we got a Magneto
that
thing
we got the X-Men crossover.
Yeah.
That was an odd one too. I'm like, wait, have we really touched on that they can read minds? I know they can sense feelings and anger and everything like that, but we've never really dove into deep that I can remember about mind reading.
Right. It's more of, I've always felt that Jedi were more empaths and not necessarily like, telepaths.
And they felt like a Magneto situation. Yeah, he's Magneto and Soul is, Professor X. I'm like, okay,
psychic abilities and stuff like that. But I mean, it's that was definitely odd, and I want to see if they go back to that at some point. But
I did have one more issue with this episode I want to talk about, which was kind of the way they got away from Kamir. That I felt after having all this great action and some good, serious dialogue and some building and stuff, the way they got rid of Kamir to get away from him was to use these alien pill bug flying things of just attaching a light to his back along with his lightsaber, and they carried him away. Like, I know it's Star Wars and we have that silly goofiness to it, but after everything being so kind of dark and dramatic, to have something kind of that silly of him being lifted away by these alien bugs was just like, okay, like he's lifted clearly out of the air. He's still fighting them in the air while they're carrying him away. And it was just like, we could have done something not as corny. And past that, I felt this should have been one episode. Episode 4 and 5 should have been one single episode. Like, we didn't feel 4 worked that great, but if it was the front half of 5 as it felt it was, that would have been a really solid episode altogether, because we got that payoff in the build with everything that came after, splitting up into 2 episodes, because it clearly felt like one, just kind of felt like, all right, why wasn't that one long episode and then we have another 5 or 6? Like it just felt like they didn't need to chop this into 2 episodes. It should have been one.
Yeah, it felt like, I don't know, maybe they feel like they had 7 episodes worth of significant story and they tried to stretch it into 8 to meet some episode quota. I don't know, but I completely agree with you that had this been, instead of like 2 35-minute episodes, if we'd have gotten like a one solid 50 to 60-minute episode and then added another one as well, that would have been, I think I would have felt a little better about it had it not been like chopped up into what felt like a 2-part story.
Yeah, because 4 didn't really give us much other than just, like as I mentioned last episode, of them just looking through a jungle and everything. Like I felt like it needed to have the back half of what was 5 to make it into a solid episode instead of 2 kind of half episodes. Because I mean, this episode, as we mentioned, it was just basically one giant battle. Yeah. And we did get some information. So I enjoyed episode 5 a lot. Yeah. some of the best action sequences we've had in Star Wars for a while. Like it was
agreed.
really entertaining with what they did with it, and it was kind of almost Game of Thrones like. You didn't know who was going to live, who was going to die, what was going to happen. Like there was so many surprises with it, but it still had its faults, as we mentioned, the corniness with the bugs, and not still like May just not feeling like a great character still so far. So hopefully 6, 7, and 8 give us a solid conclusion this season if we don't get another season, or if, hopefully if we do, we get a much better world building. Because again, I kind of went into this and them telling us it's taken place in the past and where the Jedi are prominent. Like we're just not getting the depth to the Jedi and to this world. Like we're seeing just a little snippet of everything, but we're just not getting a ton of information and world building behind it. And that's maybe I was looking at too much for this series to do. And I do want to go back after it's all done and rewatch it just to see if it might be a series that's better as a whole to binge than the weekly episode release. Like it might be something, if you watch it all together, that it's a lot more solid than watching it in fragment pieces.
And having time to digest it week by week, right? And like doing it like we have been. And that could be an interesting study because, like you said, it very well could be a much better cohesive story watching it 8 episodes in a row as opposed to week by week over a period of 2 months like we're doing. I want to end on a little bit of a positive note for that episode. In my opinion, like Star Wars is notorious for a lot of really cool action sequences and deaths. I will give it one significant credit for this episode. It has the coolest single creative kill in any Star Wars property, in my opinion, that I've seen, and it's the double Jedi kill on the saber.
The shish kebab.
The shish kebab, what we like to call it, where he sorry, I'm going to get a little graphic in my description here, where he guts one Jedi with the lightsaber through and basically force pulls another Jedi onto the same saber and kills both of them at the same time with the same blade extended.
Yeah, that was the first part of the episode where I was just...
Yeah, it was like jaw on the floor. Like I can't. And that's why I was like, we're going there with this episode, and it was just insane. Greatest single kill I think Star Wars has ever done.
Right.
So good for them on that. But I wanted to leave it on something. You say positive being
positive of two Jedis being skewered.
But I mean, it was such a cool like intense I've literally sat up and I was like, we're going there. I got into it at that. I was like, okay, you've got me hooked for at least the rest of this episode. Like, what are we doing here? But yeah, just fantastic.
Oh, yeah, that was a great, wasn't expecting it. Okay, because I think it was one of our first kills in there. It was. And we have, one Jedi die, and then you just see him pull another from off screen, just, okay.
And then beheads them.
And then, it's...
You don't see the
beheading, wild.
Obviously, but yeah, you see it like, you know what he's doing.
It was definitely a darker episode. It was, like I said, out of anything of this episode, the action sequences were fantastic. But we finally started getting a little more depth to kind of the motivations of what's going on. So we've got the Sith reveal, and we've got him giving a little bit of why he's doing this and has been doing it. But, there's still a lot of more information I feel like we need to fully tie this series up with 3 more episodes. Like we need more to May. We need more to Osha, but we need more to the overall story because so far it's been, I don't want to say linear, but it just hasn't given us those really big peaks and valleys of mystery as it kind of felt like it was starting out, this big murder mystery type of series, and that we got a little bit of a lull, and now we're back to like, all right, we know who the stranger is, but we're still trying to figure out what in the world is May and what's going on with her, but what's the overall type of story and everything they're trying to tell, because I do have a feeling episode 6, at least part of it, is going to be that flashback. I think we're finally going to get Soul to tell Osha what happened.
Right, yeah.
And so it'll be kind of his confession to her, what maybe she witnessed or saw, because we know she fell, but maybe before that she witnessed what, because there was a big break between her setting the fire at her sister's door to where she fell at the end of the episode, and all the coven was killed in between. Then maybe she witnessed the Jedi butchering the coven, and that's where all of her hate goes from, which maybe we should have seen in that episode 3 flashback to give more motivation to these last couple episodes of what's really got her, because she seems to just deplore and hate the Jedi and what they've shown of the reason why, we really don't get that. So, yeah, I have a feeling episode 6 is going to give us that flashback where we see exactly what truthfully happened with the Coven.
And one prediction I'd like to make, I don't like to project too much into the future and what I think we're going to see. I'm hoping by the end of this season, it gets revealed maybe if Khmer is someone else's apprentice turned master at this point, who that person was. And I have a sneaking suspicion it's going to be
Darth Jar Jar.
I would love for it to be Darth Jar Jar. That would be awesome. But it's going to be a Jedi that's high-ranking in the Jedi Council, I think. It's going to be somebody who's already knowing the intricate ins and outs of the Jedi and how they work and how they operate. That's going to be this. Because you get it with, Emperor Palpatine, who was a senator and who was...
The biggest corruption comes from within.
Yeah, that kind of story that you can kind of go back to the well to in a way that makes sense. And I think you're going to get that at some point. And I really hope we find that out by the end of the series.
Yeah, because that's one aspect I've wanted to see more of how the Jedi Council and how the Jedi operate, and and we've got to see a little bit of scenes, but we've stuck to a pretty small, tight cast of everything. Yeah. Well, now most of that cast is dead, and we've got a lot of fallout that's going to happen. So hopefully 6 is kind of a hybrid of we're building and we go back to the council and we're seeing a little bit of there, but we get Soul revealing kind of what happened, and it's kind of seeing what May's reaction to see if she possibly remembers something different than what Soul is telling her. But there's still a lot of story to go. But yeah, episode 5 was, I don't want to say a lot of fun because it was a very dark and deadly episode, but it was an entertaining episode.
Yes, and if you're here for the big Star Wars fight scenes, you get your fill of that in this one for sure. But like you said, there are things that they can clean up. It's not a perfect series in our opinion, but this one definitely ramped up the entertainment factor in a way that's going to hook me for the rest of hopefully the rest of the remaining 3 episodes that we've got left here before the season wraps up in a few weeks. So definitely excited for that. That is The Acolyte, episode 5. All episodes are now streaming on Disney+. Definitely go check it out and let us know what you think of this past week's episode.
So moving into our film review this week, we saw the prequel film A Quiet Place Day 1. So, this takes us back into New York City of, the very first day that the aliens, these death angels, fell to Earth in New York City. And we got to see kind of how all that happened and kind of how it ties into our other 2. So, the Quiet Place horror films have been a little different than most because there's plenty of jump scares and everything, but it's more about the tension and it's about the just feeling kind of the edge of your seat as you don't know what's going to happen, but they're character pieces. They're, the first 2 being about the family and how they go and, expanding the world a little bit. And this, we really start off right away with a revelation about our main character that they didn't really show in the trailer. So there's some slight spoilers here to begin because I think it's important. Yeah. It's important to the overall story to be able to talk about. Correct. Is that we start off at a hospice house. And so that's where we find our main character, Sam. She is, going in meetings and trying to, deal with the fact that she's in hospice at such a young age. And, she has her support cat and Frodo, which kind of steals the movie in ways. Frodo definitely becomes a character in this film. But the whole kind of movie kicks off that they've decided they're going to take, everybody in hospice here who can out to see a theater, see a show. They all think they're going to go see a big movie or matinee or Broadway play or something, but they're going to see marionettes.
Right.
There's a lot of humor behind that as well. But this, I really enjoyed the movie, but it was different than I was expecting. Like, it definitely got a lot more heartfelt and emotional and touching at the end. Not as much as, scary with it, but there was a lot of tension. Sure. But, it was kind of very emotional.
Yeah, and those monsters are definitely terrifying. Like, any random sounds, will trigger them to attack. And that's kind of been the whole point of this, having to be quiet. But, yeah, Lupita does such a great job in this movie of playing a character who, obviously is in hospice care. So you're giving when you enter hospice, you're given a finite amount of time to live. What does she want from the remainder of her life? And at the beginning of it, she seems I don't care about anything. I kind of just want to do what I want to do.
She cares about one thing.
She wants pizza.
She wants pizza.
She really wants pizza. And that was the whole motivation for her going into the city to see this show was hopefully they would stop and get pizza. And you come to find out how much that means to her throughout the film. Like, obviously, that she's wanting a very specific pizzeria in Harlem that she's wanting to, get this pizza from. And later in the movie, you find out why and the meanings that's special to her. But it, like you said, it really becomes this interesting character film about, you're faced with this apocalypse event, for lack of a better term. You're attacked by these creatures from wherever they came from, right? And there's so many people fighting to survive, to make it out, to live, and her singular focus is still, I just want to go get this pizza. Like, I know I'm going to die. I don't care if I survive. I'll help these people out as best I can, but at the end of the day, I'm going off to do my own thing, and I'm going to going to Harlem to get this pizza.
Yeah, because it was very humorous throughout, because she's just dead set. I'm getting pizza. It's like they get out of the show and there's been a warning that's made, and the main nurse, who's kind of her friend, is telling her, like, we got to go back. Something's going on in the city. She's like, I'm going to go get pizza. And he's, what are you, like, no. And we're laughing about it throughout the movie, but as the movie goes on, you definitely get more depth to why she wants the pizza, why she's wanting to go. And it was very emotional throughout that and stuff. And there were definitely some good scenes, a little bit frightening scenes, but like I said, it wasn't overall scary as you would expect. It's always been about leaving you in tension. You just don't know. And like we've talked about in the past about how when we've gone to movies lately, there's been a lot of people talking and on their phones and a lot of issues. Like, this was a movie that we were glad that everyone was being quiet with the movie. Like, they're not trying to talk to alert anybody, and it was silent in the movie theater. And you're living in that tension more because everybody is along with it. Yeah. They're not speaking. We're waiting to see what happens. And, there was a few surprises, but overall it kind of, as the other two did too. So I, in all honesty, hadn't watched the Quiet Place movies at all. And this last week going into this one, I watched both of them and I really enjoyed them, but they're definitely character-driven pieces that are about how it affects the people, less about the overall story of the aliens and why they're there and what's happening with them. And then you do have some world building in the other two about how to defeat them, but this one, could be a little disappointing in some, that if you're expecting to get a lot new lore or depth when it comes to the creatures, you're really not getting that. It is really Sam and Eric, which we end up finding out. He's another guy that kind of shows up. It looked like he was in the subway when it flooded or was coming through the subway and pops up out of the water, right next to her. And it was kind of humorous in a way because she's got that cat who just wants to run away and never stay with her. And then he was like a little lost puppy following her and not wanting to let her go. So she's chasing after the cat and he's just like helplessly following her around, because we find out a little bit more about him, that he's, from England and overseas, going to college over here. He doesn't have anybody. So he sees her and he just kind of latches on that I'm surviving with you. But we get a good building of their relationship and their feelings towards each other from a survival aspect, and how they're caring for each other and what he does for her with like getting medicine and other stuff. Like, it turned from a lost puppy to a real kinship between the two. And
give a little bit of flowers to Joseph Quinn, right, for playing Eric. So if you've seen Stranger Things, he plays Eddie in Stranger Things. He's also going to be playing Human Torch in Fantastic Four. So just a little bit of a background on who this Eric character is played by. And he does a fantastic job in this, kind of stubbornly following, he feels so alone in this, like, crazy thing that's happening that he kind of latches on to her, and, like, they strike up this, I don't want to say friendship of convenience, but they really do strike a strong bond because, Sam is so hell-bent on getting to this place to get pizza. She doesn't, she cares enough about getting people to safety to kind of help them get to where they can, go off and comfortably do that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to touch on. The other aspect of the story was they have boats that are trying to get people out of the city and rescue. So it's that and her determination to get pizza. Like, that's our two main kind of story points and threads. So, Eric's more of the, wanting to escape and get to safety, while she's trying to get to pizza. Wanted to jump in there, but it's that's kind of our two story points, is the boats and the pizza.
Yeah, that's the thing. You find out they can't swim, so the water is your safe place, right? So, there's some really cool, like, interesting spots where, like, you can hide under, like, strategically some rain and talk a little bit without alerting these creatures, because water's a little bit distracting for them. And Eric is such an interesting character to me because he feels so alone, but he finds purpose in helping her get to this pizza. And he sees that she is terminally ill and she's looking for this medicine. And it's such a well told, like you said, character piece of just helping her get to this place. And like you said, we have to get a little spoilery a little bit. They make it to this place and you find out why it means so much to her, this particular place. And there's a fun scene right before the end where he puts on a little performance for her. And
so that was one of my favorite scenes in the movie, that we end up in this jazz club and he goes and he finds stuff for her and he like borrows something from her to kind of do this whole ordeal up for her. And I just thought it was such a great, because there's not a whole lot of dialogue going on between these two. So it's all about their facial emotions and their body emotions, how they react to each other. So everything's in their body performance, and they both did so well. But that scene in particular with the jazz club and everything was just it was so good, that really kind of brought home that emotional journey that we started going. Because you start the movie off, you've got that feeling of it, but it takes a while before we start building, because she doesn't want anybody to know. She's just she's just trying to go get her pizza, and we got that emotional payoff with it all towards the end. But yeah, I love that jazz club scene.
Yeah, she knows she's going to die. She kind of wants to just face it alone. She reluctantly strikes up this friendship with Eric. And if you're wondering how it really ties to the previous two movies that you've seen, we do have Djimon Hounsou's character from A Quiet Place 2.
Yep.
Does make an appearance in this film as well. And this is kind of, he's at the center of this a little bit with, Sam, and they kind of want to breaking off. And then you see him at the end getting on the boat and escaping with everybody that makes it out, at the end of this film. And it's so well done, and even like you get this incredible payoff for Sam by the end that you're just like, okay, so she does what she does, and you don't directly see her fate at that point, but it's implied that obviously this is what's happening for her.
Yeah, it ends a lot like the first two movies, that it leaves you at a bit of a cliffhanger, that you kind of expect what's going to happen, but it leaves you with, you could come up with your own determination of what, but it is pretty clear. You just don't see how it ended. And yeah, with the spoilers here at the end, like, we went on a pretty solid journey with them. Like, I did have some slight issues with it, just like I said, being a prequel, most prequels are there to really give off more depth to the story or history or something, and there really wasn't anything new or different that it revealed or took off, as with the boats and with his character that came back from part 2, that we kind of got that story and tied into part 2, but past that, other than being in New York City and having the big spectacle, there really wasn't a whole lot more kind of world building.
Sure.
It was mainly about Eric and Sam's story, and which isn't a bad thing, but if you're going in wanting more lore,
of course,
more depth to it, especially with the prequel, it didn't really give you that. And also kind of how quickly they adapted to these aliens being here, because, we found out in the first two movies of just how quiet they need to be, and how, what they can do to try to, all right, if we got a waterfall or something, we can go under that and we can talk a little bit because it runs out. This was like 15 minutes after these aliens have shown up. They all know, well, we're not going to talk. We have to move quietly. Everyone kind of just settled straight in right away, which isn't a terrible thing. It just felt like really quickly we just went ahead and went, all right, everybody knows already exactly what they have to do to survive these aliens.
Well, I think they do a fine enough job, and I agree with you to a point, but they do a decent enough job of having, like, the government helicopters and stuff flying throughout the city, telling people to, remain indoors, remain quiet. Like, they seem to have figured out what triggers them fairly quickly, which, good on them, I guess. But
it was just good and bad. Like, it was very quickly that the military and everybody figured out, all right, these are brand new alien creatures. All we know, they like sound, they're blind, they can't see you. It was just very quickly that we kind of just, it wasn't that important to the story, but it was just kind of like, all right, we're going to spend 5 minutes to set up that everyone knows what to do.
It wasn't a realistic adjustment that people would have made, right? just immediately know that. And I can get where you're coming from, but in the sense of the story, it was like, okay, we figured it out. Like, we're not going to spend that much time diving into how we figured it out, but we already know. So I kind of get what you're saying from a logic standpoint, that doesn't necessarily make sense. But I think at the end of the day, like you said, this is a character piece. It's about one character's experience at the beginning of the onset of this. So it doesn't world build a lot, like giving a lot of depth, and it doesn't even really explain how they came to landing anyway and what caused that. So you don't really get that information from it as well. But I really enjoyed it. I thought the acting was incredible for the lack of dialogue given in the film. Like the emotional acting, emoting with your face and your body, like you said, they do such an incredible job at that it was really what I really appreciate about these types of films is they force you to pay attention, and it grips you and it keeps you like emotionally invested through tension. Like you said, you never know when something's going to happen. And like you said, there's the occasional jump scare that, they get you for something, but they do such a good job of holding that tension that you're forced to really just if you want to get what's going on, you have to put your phone down. You have to clear away any distractions and forcefully pay attention if you want to know what's going on. And they did a brilliant job of that, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I like the subway scene with the tension and everything there because of, we're getting a subway that's filling up with water and it's dark and very little light but a flashlight, and we're getting, seeing the creature. So it's definitely had a very creepy, high tension vibe. And, we also got to see with Eric's character, he's not as capable of dealing with it as she is, because she's, as we learn everything about her, that she's kind of already in that mindset with death and everything else, and he's not. So we see panic attacks and anxiety, and that causes a lot of problems as they're trying to hide from these creatures, and especially that subway scene. And that was a really high tension moment. I'm kind of glued to the screen, what's going on? Is this gonna? Because it was, even with the originals, you really weren't sure what's going to happen, because you had, with the first one, a little bit of spoiler if you haven't seen it by now, a kid just gets demolished by one of these monsters that you didn't fully expect. I mean, it did it up, but are they really going to do that? Oh, they did. So, you didn't know exactly who was going to make it, or if, because she had ventured with a couple people at this point until she met with him. Was he just going to be one that was just here for a little bit and then he's gone? But overall, like I said, it's well acted. It looked really great. The tension was high. So the only complaints I had was that we just didn't get a whole lot of lore. It wasn't really world building anything else. It was just kind of another story within this universe, which it was told well. It was just, I was kind of hoping that we'd get a little bit more depth to why this happened, or we're just not meant to. It's just, hey, this is an alien invasion, and it's more about seeing how people deal with this situation different ways. Because, Quiet Place 1, dealing with the family, Quiet Place 2, dealing with parts of the family being left and meeting other people and trying to find a safe place. And then this one is just them trying to find an escape, but also find pizza. So it was a different story, but also a very similar story, but it told it very well.
So I think we've gotten back-to-back movies now where where we've had to talk about expectations for a film before you go into it, right? Because like you said, if you hear a prequel for something, you expect a little bit of more information or some background knowledge as to why these things that have happened in the subsequent movies are happening, right? So I think if you go in with that expectation of knowing that going in, does it affect your viewing experience at that point? If you know, hey, it's not necessarily going to get X and Y, but you're getting Z, and is Z done really well? I think it was, but I think it goes to show another thing we could talk about eventually at some point that I'd like to talk about: expectations going into a movie versus what the movie actually winds up delivering, right? And how that can affect how you view a movie. Because like you said, I think we could both come to the agreement that the character work in the story and the narrative that they told was great, but did it match the expectations of the movie that you had going in, and how does that affect your overall viewing of it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and this was also the first one that John Krasinski didn't direct. He was executive producing of it, and he co-wrote the first one, wrote and directed the second one, and then turned the writing and directing over to another person. So, which I thought they did a great job, but it was also it didn't bring anything new, but it was a great story. Like
Sure.
it was,
Yeah, yeah.
it was a solid story that I was gripped all the way throughout. Great performances, good tension. He said if you're expecting horror, there's some good elements, but it's not like a scary movie to me. Maybe it's just me, but it just didn't feel like it had great tension. But that's what I liked about it, that it wasn't as much about the exactly gore or like straight. It had a lot of jump scares, but it was more about you feeling the dread and tension as the characters did. Like it was wanting you to go along with this journey as they did and feel as they did and getting that emotional connection to the characters. And by the end, it really became this big emotional story. And that's in the end what it was really about.
Agreed. And I would say horror adjacent, maybe like more of a suspense type.
Kind of suspense thriller,
kind
more
of
than
ish, but yeah, there's definitely some horror elements to it for sure. And I think if you wanted to throw it in that bucket, you could and would be fine. But yeah, there's not a lot of that, involved in it. But man, there's definitely some scary stuff that goes down in that when like it just you deal with just packs of people and getting attacked simultaneously. There are definitely some scary moments for that, for sure, especially in those types of attack scenes and who's getting attacked and who's not and who's doing it. So there are some horror elements to it, but it's definitely the meat of the story is much more suspenseful.
Yeah, much more about the suspense and, like I said, the character development and the character story with it. And he said they did a fantastic job with Sam and Eric. Like you really felt for them. You got that emotional connection. Even when most of their scenes together, there was no talking or there was very whispers and they were saying very little. Like they did a great job playing off of each other and they worked together really well.
Agreed, and I think the story definitely needed that to kind of really keep you invested. To have Eric as a I don't want to say side character, but like a co-main character in this to go along that journey with her. Because if it was just her trying to survive, I don't know if it would have had the same impact.
And of course, throwing Frodo the cat there of comedy, but also giving you a little suspense because you're not sure what's going to happen because he's just running off when things get scared, and then he just pops back up like, hey.
A little bit of tension relief because I wanted to alleviate some of that tension a little bit just to talk about one scene that I just laughed at. And there's just a random scene of him running down the street chasing a mouse and just kind of pawing at it just for a random reason. Like he's running away. And where's this cat off to? Oh, he's chasing a mouse down the street during this. A little bit of tension relief, but it steals a lot of scenes, the cat does.
The quietest cat ever.
The quietest cat I've ever seen in my life. But yeah, it was fun. Frodo. Love the name for the cat too. Obviously, being a Lord of the Rings nerd that I am, I'm all for a cat named Frodo. So definitely a good job with the cat in the film as well. But yeah, I really enjoyed it too. It's a great character story set in a much bigger world that we really got to narrow in and focus on. If you're going just expecting it to be alien centric, it's not necessarily that. But if you know like that it's more character driven, I think you'll really find some enjoyment in the movie for sure.
So A Quiet Place Day 1 is in theaters right now. It seems to be doing pretty good. Looking at the early box office numbers, I think it had the biggest Thursday, Friday opening for the series. Looks like it might have the biggest weekend opening for the series. So people are definitely going out to it. And again, this, even though it's a third one, I wouldn't exactly call this a big tentpole movie.
Sure, yeah.
That it's more kind of still smaller. I don't know what kind of budget it had to it, but I wouldn't put it up there with when we're expecting these huge, big blockbuster movies. But it's performing fairly well, and we recommend going and checking it out, especially if you like the more suspense, thriller, character-driven stories. You should find some enjoyment. And if you enjoyed the first two Quiet Place, I wouldn't see why you wouldn't enjoy this unless you're dead set on expectations before of wanting something that's very heavy with the lore. It doesn't really give you that, but it gives you a good character story. So go check it out in theaters now. Coming up next week, so we got a couple kind of big films. So like the Maxine trilogy here of films. Like people have been obsessed with them. I've never watched Pearl or any of those. They're kind of adult horror, thriller, slasher movies, which I need to check out. It's opening this week against something completely different in Despicable Me 4. So, Despicable Me 4 might potentially be another big summer blockbuster like Inside Out 2 was. We'll see if it has the legs that Inside Out 2 has, but definitely be checking out those this week. week. It depends on what you want. You've got horror, you've got more adult stuff, or you got more family fun and Despicable Me. And that's what we're going to be checking out next week is Despicable Me 4, seeing another family film and seeing how it compares to the biggest movie of the year so far in Inside Out 2. Then on streaming, we have something that I am really looking forward to. It's another one. Do we need it after this long? Because we're revisiting the Beverly Hills Cop series in Axel F on Netflix, out on July 3rd. We're going to be reviewing that a little bit, I think a couple episodes from now.
Could be.
I'm looking forward to it. I love the original Beverly Hills Cop movie, even though a lot of people feel the third one wasn't quite as strong. I had a ton of fun with it, and we get to see pretty much the entire cast coming back for it. And you had in Joseph Gordon-Levitt and some new members. I hope it's a lot of fun. I think it had $150 million budget, so they spent some money on it. We'll just see after 30 years or so that if the Beverly Hills Cop still has the same impact that it did back in the 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun to dive in and see what they do. It's either gonna be really good or it's gonna be a car crash, and we're gonna come talk about it either way, right? So I'm definitely excited to check that out. Excited to check out Despicable Me 4 as well because the Minions still holding strong. Like you said, that's another franchise that's got a lot of legs, a lot of popularity to it, a lot of integration into like theme parks and other things like that.
Yeah, they just got Minions, a new world open.
Yeah, just so much stuff Minion related that I see why they're going back and making another one of these, and we're excited to check it out and review it as well. So that kind of leads us to the end of the episode now, where next week we will be talking about those movies. But before I get into that, I wanted to make a little bit of an announcement here. Moving into July as we are now, it is Deadpool and Wolverine month. We are so excited to see this film finally at the end of July that we are coming out with 2 brand new limited edition merch items in our merch store. So if you go to willbringthepopcorn.com, check out our merch section. They should be dropping as soon as this episode drops. You can get both of our new Marvel-related T-shirts for this film. We are so excited to check it out. The really cool designs, Brad. You did a really good job of making these and setting up these special limited edition shirts. We're excited for them.
Yeah, so finish the episode, go over, get you a couple shirts, and be ready to go wear them as you watch Deadpool and Wolverine at the end of the month.
So excited for that. And coming up next week, like we said, we will be reviewing Despicable Me 4. Very excited to check that out, as well as episode 6 of The Acolyte on Disney+. So we can't thank you enough for all your continued support. Check us out on YouTube. Check us out at willbringthepopcorn.com, where we have all our social medias. Come talk to us in Discord as well. We would love to talk movies with you and everything that we're reviewing, some things you're looking forward to, some things you're watching. Just come chat it up with us. We're excited to talk to anybody about movies. Obviously, we wouldn't be doing a podcast if we didn't love movies and TV. So come check it out and talk to us as well. But until next time, I'm Josh, he's Brad, and we will see you next week.